Hello my dear friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Barbara, and today we're going to be looking at the importance of the fourth house. Very excited to be getting into this video. This video is for you if you are just overall interested in the importance of the fourth house. It's going to apply to everyone in their natal chart. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Personally, I find the fourth house to be one of the most important houses of the entire natal chart. I like to look at the natal chart as a progression. You know, we have the first house through the 12th house. Usually you can't really progress if you are stuck on a particular house. That's how I see it. So a lot of the time when I look at people's natal charts, I'm always going to look and see what's going on with their fourth house IC. This is your home, this is your upbringing. It can also be how you are in private later on in life. Maybe what kind of home you want to have, what kind of living situation you have. It's going to really tell you a lot. But what I will also say is it is opposing the 10th house. So a lot of the time, the fourth house and things that could have taken place within the home could be affecting your career because it is an oppositional energy. There could be something here that needs to be learned, integrated, healed, mastered from the fourth house in order to get to the 10th house. Now, to activate the 10th house, there are several things that you can look at. You can also look at the 9th house because the 9th house does deal with the people you are learning from. So again, it is a progression. You can't get to the 10th house until you go through all of the preceding houses. So same thing with the fourth house. The fourth house is the home. It is your foundation. So if you look at building a house, a home overall, when you're building a house, you need to have a strong foundation. Otherwise, the whole house of cards starts falling down. And I'm not a psychologist, but in psychology, you're always going to be looking at the original two caregivers to see how you were brought up, because throughout your life, you're going to be perpetuating these similar dynamics within your relationships as well. Because I think at the end of the day, this is just my opinion, I think we are all trying to eventually just heal ourselves, reintegrate the soul, heal that inner child, because you're going to start to notice as you heal and grow, you'll start to see how people are playing out their own inner childhood wounds, or just like things that maybe they didn't have in their childhood, or maybe things that, you know, weren't allowed in their childhood, or just rebellion in general. You'll really start to notice this. And it's like the more self-aware you become, you really start to really reflect on yourself and ask yourself, is this an action out of my childhood wounding? Everyone has some sort of childhood wounding. It's just the times that we are living in. A lot of people are healing and growing and starting to recognize these things, which is amazing. As we all heal and grow, we basically help the collective heal and grow as well. So really, you never know what affected someone in what way. I always kind of say this, you can have two siblings who grew up in the same household and maybe they were experiencing the dynamics differently, maybe between the parents or the situation or whatever the circumstance was. There is always a story, and your fourth house is going to tell you what that particular story was. Now, when we look at the fourth house, you also have the divine version of what that particular situation could be and the shadow version. I do have videos on the fourth house IC. I believe I do have a playlist, so definitely check that out. It's going to give you a little bit more insight as to what could have taken place within the home. Overall, the fourth house also does deal with the mother. It deals with the internal world. It is ruled by the moon, so it's the emotional world as well. So when we're looking at the emotional world, you can look at your moon sign. We can also look at the fourth house, and this is going to give you more insight as to maybe what the dynamic was with the mother. If it's not the mother, you're going to look at the dominant feminine role in your life, and this could be maybe even a grandmother, or if the roles were reversed, you would look toward the father in that particular situation in terms of the inner world, the emotional world, or whatever's happening in your moon sign and in your fourth house. You're basically healing this particular aspect of yourself, and maybe you're healing patterns that were passed down throughout the feminine line as well. You're basically transmuting this energy. That's what healing really is. If you think about it, you're transmuting energies that maybe were passed down. And the whole, I guess, end goal of this is so you yourself can live in your highest truth, you know, and that highest vibration for yourself and that full self-alignment. So maybe there are things that could be holding you back, especially again when we're looking at that 10th house, fourth house axis. What could be taking place is, again, maybe there are belief systems, maybe there's even fear around what the parents are going to say or think that could be holding you guys back from the full-blown career. Now, I know maybe people tuning into this video are going to say, I don't care about career, and that's fine, but this is kind of the idea with the fourth house overall. Is just affecting every aspect of your life. The 10th house doesn't necessarily have to be career. It's how you are in public. It's how you are when you're interacting with other people. It's how you want people to perceive you as well, even when you're posting on social media. So it's really interesting when we think about it, because it's like it's an oppositional energy. You can even kind of start to see and think maybe, you know, the way that someone is presenting themselves maybe on their social media or publicly, because it is the oppositional energy. Maybe their home, the fourth house, could have been opposite to that. So it's really interesting when we really start to look at these things. And it's always going to give you more insight. Like I said, there's a light version and a dark version of each of the signs. Sometimes the home life could have gone in the light version, which is amazing because then you're having these healthy relationships and basically kind of blossoming as a person to be your own person. That's the whole thing here. And that's a lot of the struggle. If if we really think about it, because it's like, I mean, I'm not going to go into the whole theory and at least my theories as to why people maybe have kids, but a lot of the time something that happens in these situations is that when people have children, sometimes they want their children to validate their own existence. Sometimes, I'm not saying this is always taking place, but this is something that can definitely take place. So it's like you really have to explore. It's going to be different for each person. It's a case-by-case scenario, but it's like you have to see what took place within the home. What were your original foundations? Was it a healthy foundation? Was it a not healthy foundation? What were the dynamics? Were there attachment style problems? It all comes from this, and it all stems from this, because you're going to start to see that sometimes people's wounding is going to be holding them back. And again, we're going to have a little bit more information as to maybe what that wounding could be based on the sign you've got going on in your fourth house. Because it's like, let's say in your fourth house, maybe you have Pisces, and it's like now you're always dreaming of having an ideal family, and maybe it didn't play out that way. Well, now this could be holding you back. Let's say you stay in jobs longer than you should. Let's say you stay in relationships longer than you should, because it's giving you that family feel that maybe you didn't have when you were growing up. This is kind of just a random example, but that's the whole idea here. Now, also having different planets in here, when I see an abundance of fourth house planets in someone's natal chart, it's always going to signify to me when I'm looking at someone's natal chart that there's even more karma here to clear around the home, more situations that could be holding them back. Maybe once again, the person is seeking constant approval from their parents. And honestly, it's like you might think that you're not, but it could be happening in subtle, covert ways. Sometimes people start to live like double lives and things like this, where it's like they're doing one thing to satisfy and appease the parents, and they're kind of doing their own thing on the side. And it's like it creates a split within the individual. And you might not even realize that you're doing this, because in a way, it's coping, it's survival, and it's all these things. So again, you really have to start to reflect. That's the whole thing here. I'm recording this video to kind of just spark some thought within individuals, so you guys can kind of start to reflect and see what took place and maybe what could be holding you back, what kind of belief systems, maybe they're outdated belief systems. Because at the end of the day, the times are changing. So things that may have worked for previous generations in general might not necessarily work for this current time that we're living in, this era. We've had an acceleration, let's say, in technology. So this is only one part of the story. If you really think about it, there's so many other things in terms of, again, the social dynamics and all these things that are changing and evolving. It doesn't mean that their way is wrong or that their way isn't going to work. It's just that it could be outdated belief systems, because if you think about it, maybe they took on their belief systems from their parents, and it could just be overall things that were passed down. Again, the times that we're living in are completely different now, higher vibrational. And what I will always say is the soul always knows. That's what I'm going to say, because it's like on a soul level, you're always intuitively going to be guided. It's just a matter of tapping into this, and you can tap into it more easily when you do go through your healing process and kind of just throwing out energies that no longer serve you, belief systems that no longer serve you, maybe even fears around what people will think, all these things that could really be holding you back. Now, another thing also that I want to talk about in this video is the fourth house connection to the mother wound. This is really interesting. You will see this as a huge wound within the Pluto in Scorpio generation, which is the millennial generation. Something that I've observed, once again, these are just my own observations, is that a lot of these attachment styles, attachment issues, things that could be once again holding individuals back, could be the dynamics that took place with the mother. Obviously, this is a huge generalization and might not necessarily apply to everybody, but when we make a generalization, it applies to a lot of the individuals that are maybe within that generation. So the mother wound being there, how could this manifest? It can manifest as codependencies, always seeking love, always latching on to an individual because maybe you didn't get enough of that affection and love when you were growing up. Once again, I'm not a psychologist, just observations that I have made from just observing people in general. So these could be a few things that take place, and it's like if you're once again stuck in this constant wounding, it's perpetuating throughout all of your relationships, and it could be holding you back. Because it's like if we look at something like codependency, it's very closely connected to the fear of being alone. And then it's like if you fear being alone, it can hold you back in a lot of situations in your life. You could be in a lot of friendships longer than you should, maybe relationships longer than you should, because you fear being alone. And then in turn, then this can hold you back from whatever your soul's purpose is, your soul's blueprint. And what's really important to understand is like, no matter what point you are in your life, if you guys are choosing yourself, the universe is always going to reward you. There might be a buffer time where maybe you do leave everything behind, but what's important to understand is that the universe will always bring through people to align with you at your current vibration that you are at. Something that I've noticed even with relationships is like when things are past their expiration date, and it could have been the best relationship ever, honestly, it doesn't even have to be something that was unhealthy and toxic. it could have been an amazing relationship, but it's like maybe these two individuals served each other for a certain amount of time, and now it's time to move on for whatever reason. Maybe the two people just grew apart. Maybe they have different interests now. Whatever the situation might be, it's like if you try to hold on, it just starts to get toxic, and resentment builds and all these sorts of things. So this is what I mean by a lot of these societal belief systems and structures starting to break down, is really what that is, because it's like at the end of the day, the soul has a certain path. You're always going to be pulled in the direction of what the soul wants. The heart frequency is going to know. So it's like if you're stuck in a loop of codependency and you don't want to let things go, well then as time goes on, you're not maybe doing what your soul wants or your soul's purpose or whatever it might be. And it's like, again, it could build negative energy, negative emotions. Obviously it's easier said than done. I completely understand that. I'm kind of just giving you guys examples how this energy can manifest overall. But this is the whole thing, okay? So everything comes from the home. Everything comes from the original foundations. If there is a rocky foundation when you were growing up, this can affect you throughout your life, is really what that is. And definitely if this is you, maybe seek out ways to explore this, to figure out what's these maybe deep-rooted issues, situations, traumas, belief systems, whatever they are that could be holding you back. Because if we look at the progression once again of the natal chart, it's from the first house to the 12th house. So if you're stuck at the 4th house and maybe you're stuck at a certain development, I actually talked about this in my Saturn in the 4th house video where I compared the Erickson model in psychology. Once again, I'm not a psychologist. I just happen to be very interested in all these topics. So I compared the Erickson model, and the Erickson model has all these stages throughout life that the person kind of has this milestone through. But what tends to happen is if you're stuck at a certain stage, he calls this the crisis. You are unable to go on to the next stage of your life. Let's say in a situation where you're maybe stuck in one of your woundings, you know, maybe you are running away from responsibility because a lot of responsibility was placed upon you as a child. Let's say it was something like this. Now throughout your life, you're going to constantly be running away from responsibility, and this can really affect a lot of areas in your life, whether you are aware of it or not. It can affect your career, once again, the 10th house. It can affect even your relationships, maybe serious relationships. It can affect everything, is really what that is, because everything is a form of responsibility. Let's say maybe you want to become a manager or something of that sort, and it's like maybe you have this unconscious belief or subconscious belief where it's like you don't want the responsibility. Well, you could be pushing it away because now you don't want responsibility, and this is very closely tied to maybe you having a lot of responsibility placed upon you at a young age. Maybe you didn't have the time to be a child and to have fun, and maybe you started working very young because maybe there was financial problems within the home. Every situation is going to be different. I'm kind of just throwing different ideas out there as to what it can be. The sign is going to give you a very, very good indication as to what this particular situation could have been for you. But that's the whole idea here, really, with the 4th house. It kind of keeps you stuck. It keeps you in that crisis mode within the Erickson model that I was just mentioning. You are unable to move on. You're unable to go on to maybe the next phase of your life because it's like you have this internal crisis, is really what that is. And it's interesting because it's like with the whole crisis situation, you know, eventually the energy is going to come out. Might be in old age. Let's say you spent your entire time taking care of people when you were younger, and eventually the energy is going to manifest in a way where it's like maybe you now need to be taken care of or something of that sort. Once again, throwing out random examples out there, but really the whole point of this video overall is to explore what's taking place in the 4th house and the IC. And overall, maybe you have 2 signs in the 4th house. Maybe you even have an interception when it comes to the 4th house. All of this is going to play a role, and then the planets, of course, are going to play a role as well. And then vice versa. Let's say you have a lot of 10th house planets. Well, in that situation, the inner desire is going to be where you want to be seen. You want to be in some sort of public role. Maybe you have huge career goals and ambitions and these types of things. But again, you're going to have to look at the 4th house, because the 4th house, if it's not going in the way that you want, the career and these goals and building that wealth that you might want to build because of the 10th house, go and look at the 4th house, because the 4th house is going to give you indications as to what belief systems you guys might have that could be holding you back, or what wounding might be taking place, or where you guys might be having your energy siphoned because maybe you guys are living in that split energy. You're trying to make this person happy, you're trying to make that person happy. And even if it's not your parents, like even if it's not the original 2 caregivers or whoever the dominant masculine, dominant feminine role was when you were growing up, it's going to perpetuate throughout your relationships. This is the most important thing to understand until you basically heal and integrate all those lower chakra wounds that I do mention a lot in these videos. So this is the overall idea here. I almost want to say that the 4th house is one of the most important houses in your natal chart to master if you're trying to live in this sort of soul's purpose type of situation where you're living in your highest truth and you're in alignment and you're living your life for yourself, not for other people, not for making other people happy, not for societal expectations and all the boxes that we have created as humans as time has gone on. So with all that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video here. I do hope you guys enjoyed my video on the importance of the 4th house. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you all have a beautiful rest of the day.